Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. Wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
All right, Wild Health listeners, good to chat with you guys. We have one of our awesome premium health coaches here, Ray Fernandez. We are going to chat about wearables today. I'm Erin Foles, one of our docs. And this is something that comes up literally every single day with our patients. And so I think it's a good thing to dive into what of these wearables are worth it? What kind of information can we get? What kind of action steps can we take? Is any of it total hype? So Ray's kind of our in-house expert on these things, and he really kind of deep dives into some of this stuff. He's also really great at coaching patients in terms of performance and exercise. This is, I don't want to speak out of turn, but a big passion and expertise of yours, personally and professionally, right, Ray? So I think
Yeah.
this is an area where wearables are often used as well. So I'm excited to dive into all of this and probably learn something myself while we're chatting, Ray.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be on again. And yeah, this is one big thing or let's just say comment that I've when I first started with Wild Health was what gets measured gets managed. Right. That was kind of the big that really drew me into these wearables. And yeah, I ever since learning for myself, I like to practice what I preach. It's just been constantly a growth and learning process. Like there's so many new things coming out. So it's all about just like what are people doing? What are people seeing? How do we learn what these new devices, algorithms, and equations, equate to? And we kind of roll from there. But excited to talk about the common ones we see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So I guess I'll just start it off with, what do you do personally? I
Mhm.
think people would be kind of interested to know what wearables you find helpful personally, especially given, not only in the wild health capacity, but performance is a big passion of yours, right? I mean, I don't do you want to expand on that a little bit for the listeners?
Yeah. Yeah. So the ones I use personally right now for my stress and HRV and sleep, kind of my day to day activities is the Oura Ring. I use that one personally, and we'll expand a little bit more on why and on that. But for performance, I use a completely separate one. So for my workouts, I use the Morpheus device, and the reason why it's the accuracy. So this is an ECG type of monitor, and so the electrical signals of the heart, it's tracking that, so more accurate than a PPG, which is the photo. How do you say it? The light sensors on the ring on the finger, right? It's once you move, it's not as accurate, right? So I use the Morpheus just for training, and then I use the Aura for everyday lifestyle right now. And those are the only two right now. I don't want to say I wear like 5 different ones, but I know like people who wear so many of them. But those are the ones I typically use.
Yeah, totally. We definitely have our patients that have a continuous glucose monitor on. They have a
Hmm.
Whoop and an Aura. I own both, to be completely fair. I
A
don't
Whoop
use
and a Aura.
them both
Okay,
at the
yeah,
same time, but I definitely own them both. Sometimes they'll have the Apollo wearable on at night for
oh
calming.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
they're sleeping on an 8 sleep. Like this is maybe they wear their Garmin when they're doing their endurance activities. Like we definitely have patients that they probably
yeah.
run the gamut in these things,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
probably practitioners. So you're not alone if that's you and you're listening and you're interested in wearables, but that's super, super interesting. Do you find that Morpheus well, why don't you explain a little bit? I think this is maybe one of the lesser known
Yeah,
wearables compared to, at least for some of our patients who tend to be pretty knowledgeable about this stuff in terms of comparing it to like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or even a Whoop or an Aura, I think Morpheus is a little bit like another level of a specific use, like you're sharing. So, would you mind
Yeah,
expanding on that one a little bit more?
I can. Yeah, so the Morpheus, it essentially is specifically for heart rate training, and it's not only the device that makes it accurate. Where you get the most bang for your buck is actually in the app itself. So the Morpheus app can gather the data and give you these buckets of time that you should spend in each zone. So that's a popular thing now, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 and
Heart rate
above,
zone
right?
for
Heart rate
listeners.
zones. Yep.
Yeah.
Heart rate zone. So it'll give you these weekly training zone targets off of a few measurements, right? Your HRV in the morning, your resting heart rate, and your recovery. So those are just a few of the metrics that they use. And so, why I use that, if I'm trying to be a little more accurate and I have, some very specific goals for something, like I want to improve my VO2 max. A lot of times, people go into a higher heart rate than they think, and they're not actually improving their aerobic capacity. They're stressing their body out more, being in zone 3 and 4, right? Versus the fat oxidizing, where you build more of the aerobic base in that zone 1 and 2. They're just dabbling too long in that higher zone, and unfortunately, some of the wearables aren't accurate, right? So, like if you're wearing an Oura Ring for it, it may spike to like 150, 160 when you're really at like 120 or something, or the vice versa. And so what I learned is through the Whoop, I was wearing the Whoop first for training. And when I was also wearing the Morpheus at the same time. And Whoop would actually short me a couple minutes in my high heart rate. So if I was really focused on how do I recover, how many minutes am I spending in zone 5, uh, it's not it's not accurate. And so I'm not getting the most out of the data, and I may be doing wrong things in my lifestyle behaviors, thinking like, oh, I'm not in zone 5 for 4 minutes, only 2. Whereas I was double that, and that's way more stress on the body. So all of this said, this is for someone who's in the next level of wanting to know more data. This is all
Sure.
right. Like we have a lot of patients who
It's gonna be a
don't
little
want.
too much for a lot of people,
Exactly,
or a
exactly.
lot too
It's
much for a lot of people.
Yeah, and but a lot of people want to learn. I think this is what you want out of the wearable is awareness. Like, what are you trying to learn from this? And they're coming here for lifestyle and behavior change, right? It's like if you're coming into that with that idea or that like want to understand what's going on in your life and how to improve it, that this is like the next step. The before that is the basics, right? Are we at least moving our body? And this is where, you talk to Steve about what are the basics of movement, and then we talk all about our pillars, the sleep, nutrition. Do we have the basics down there? And sometimes our patients are like, "Hey, I don't want to get a lot of data. What are the things that I can do in this seasons of life that I'm in?" So it's really like knowing and I guess this is now talking about the patient now, right? But this is knowing where they're at and what they want to do first. And if we want to dabble in more data, then we can introduce them to that whole world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but I think a lot of patients are already putting in the effort with the exercise, and they're
Hmm.
making those efforts. They want to make sure they're doing the right things, right? Like, are
Yeah.
they shortchanging themselves in terms of hit training, or are they over like exerting themselves with an effort for zone 2? Like, I think when people spend too long in those zone 3, 4 stages, they're not getting the benefits of either fully,
Hmm.
but they're getting a lot of oxidative stress or strain from the exercise, right? So it's like, and it's hard, right? That type of cardio is hard to do for extended periods of time. And so I
Totally.
think they're putting all this effort in, but are they really getting the rewards they're going for? And these kind of wearables, what you're saying, gives us a really accurate snapshot where our coaches can help decipher, are you getting those and how do we need to tweak things? Is that kind of in a nutshell?
Exactly. There's a couple markers you look at, right? Is progress. Like, are you losing the weight? Are you getting faster? Right? That's one. That's
Is your
actually one of the
VO2 max
probably
changing?
is your VO2 max changing. Those are the main markers, right? And if you're not, and if you're still like stagnant on a weight or you're not improving, you're more tired, then it's like, let's look into that a little more. This is where the data can help us. This is where these wearables can help us. So looking more deeply into that, understanding those, and then putting the action plan to it.
Yeah, so we just
Mhm.
talked about this on a podcast with Steve, but this is more than just performance, right? I mean, VO2 max is one of the single biggest predictors of mortality risk, right? So
Right.
this is about health span, this is about longevity, this is about living an independent, functional life as long as you're alive, right? Like this is more than just how fast are you and how much can you win at certain performance activities, which is sometimes, I mean,
Yeah.
we work with a lot of athletes, like this is an awesome goal as well. They're just separate goals, but you don't it's not just about performance in these types of metrics. Like it really teaches us how we can help you move your body in the right way to see the results and achieve the goals you're going for with the effort you're already putting in, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Very cool. And then I think like on a more common level, patients are just looking at like, what should I be doing? What is too much or too little for my body? You know, they look up online what kind of exercise they should do, and it's kind of different advice. Like for everybody across the board. I see this all the time with women. They're kind of under fueling and overtraining for the amount of strain they're putting on their body.
Right.
And yes, we want to look at that overall allostatic or stress load on the body each day. I tell people it's kind of like a battery life that you have. And not only exercise can bring it down, but like so can illness, so can stress. You know, I call it super mom syndrome. Like just or super parent syndrome, super dad syndrome, like you're just go, go, go all day long, right? Always on, always vigilant. And that can kind of take it away. Not fueling enough, alcohol, illness, toxins, like exercise. Some of these things aren't inherently bad, but they do cause oxidative stress,
Stress.
strain, and inflammation, right? So, like, where is that balance? And I think that's what a lot of people, just kind of your everyday person looking to optimize health and life, are looking for in a wearable. Would you explain what some of your favorites are for kind of a more basic level? I think maybe what you use your Aura for, like
Mhm.
how well are you sleeping and how overall kind of how are you recovering? What is your body available for that next day? Like, could you explain how you share that with patients and how you direct people in one way or another. And none of these are sponsored. Like we don't we don't have a say in what, you know, we don't have a financial gain in what wearables people are using. Um, but this is just, you know, there's different ones for different people can make sense.
Yeah. No, I'd love to, chat about that and just I'll kind of go back into like the Morpheus recovery and HRV trends. We have to look at all of these wearables as different algorithms and equations. We can't compare your Morpheus to your Aura, your Morpheus to your Whoop, because one might say a higher HRV and one's going to say a lower one. But we're going to keep looking at these for trends. And I was going to mention that when I see.
Comparing to itself.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
compare it to itself, its own device. When I see my, Morpheus is trending the wrong way, when it's trending, down, HRV's down, resting heart rate's going up, I'm not recovering well, this is where I utilize my Oura Ring. So I look at the other pillars, right? Like, am I not sleeping well? Am I not I'm not fueling enough? What's going on? Higher stress. So that's what we look at with our patients first is I don't, um ask them all of this. We need to work on nutrition and sleep and everything, like, just off the bat. We focus on one thing, and they're like, my sleep is really bad." So it's like, "Okay, let's go
Right.
into sleep." We go into an audit of their sleep hygiene. What do they do a few hours before? And we write that down. So it's, again, the awareness. We build that awareness, and we just wear the wearable for, 2 weeks and don't change anything. And where is that gonna lead us? Then we decide, okay, what is it? Oh, you didn't realize that you're working late all the time. Blue light, like you're just on the screens all the time, and the stress is just going, or the deep sleep, the REM sleep is not improving, right? So there's a few metrics that we want to look at, but also pinpoint, like, what is it that? And I think Whoop does a really good job of the journal. Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned that before. But this is where, if you don't have a health coach, right? If you're just doing this by yourself, like, that's the hardest part, is picking one of those behaviors and just picking, hold that behavior for like a week and just let's see where it goes, where it trends. Um,
So those kind of more basic, not
Mhm.
basic, but those are going to give you kind of a more foundational assessment of how well you're recovering and how much your body's ready for, right? Something like a Whoop or an Aura, where it's going to evaluate your sleep. It might not be as accurate in real time for the performance metrics, but it is going to give you a little bit of an assessment, maybe better than a gut check for people, in terms
Uh-huh.
of where, like, how recovered are they and how much capacity do they have that coming day to push it or not.
Ooh, yeah. So looking at the day-to-day number, right? This is kind of where we're going. And so this one is this it's almost the same answer of like you can't look at that day and make that decision of like if I had a low HRV and low recovery. Um and how do you feel, right? Do you feel okay? Then follow your program. Like whether it's you've planned on working out for 30 minutes that day, do it, right? It's the days prior leading to that, were you low the 3 days prior? That's when you have to understand, like, my body's in high stress. I need to change or modify what's going on. So that's what you want how you wanna look at these numbers is more for the trends of it in the
Mhm.
weeks, over 14 days, over 30 days, versus a day-to-day thing. So yeah, I think that's the question I get a lot, like, where should I push hard if my HRV is low? And what happens when we're stressed? What happens if we could all measure our HRV real time without wearables, we wouldn't have these wearables, right? We would just know. But this is why we have to understand also what is going on in our nervous system, right? HRV typically drops when we're stressed, and it typically rises when we're in that parasympathetic state, right? So it's that balance over time where the difference in wearables, right? So the Aura, the Whoop, all these the PPG sensors, or they usually track your HRV overnight, and that's the score you get in the morning. Wearables like the Morpheus will spot check you. They call it like active checking, first thing in the morning. So very controlled and always at the same time every day. So first thing in the morning. So we're going into accuracy here, but ultimately it's trending all of these things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one kind of pushback I would give on that is there are scenarios when I think I know both from
Mhm.
personal experience and with patients that sometimes these sorts of monitors will pick up on stressors that you may not even know exist. Like I've had women that find out they're
Oh,
pregnant based on these monitors. I've had people, including myself, are like, "Oh, I think I'm coming down with something. My system's a little off. I'm gonna take it a little easier today." The question is, would I have known that on a gut check or not? If I felt okay, or are you compounding that oxidative stress? Like it's such a good question, right? Are you compounding that
yeah.
stress to kind of say your system's already a little strained from something sneaking in there? And then or maybe you were up all night with the baby, or you were, who knows, a number of things, but some outlier is in place that strained your system aside from just your general trend, right? And then if you compound that by, well, people say it's a big stress relief to go do my Metcon or to go do my whatever, but if your body doesn't have that ability to respond positively to that stress because it wasn't recovered from the night before, then you might start that trend of
Right.
negative, impact. So it's kind of interesting to think about like which way to look at it first. I think I think the what I'm getting from hearing this is such a cool perspective to hear from you. I think just hold it a little bit loosely. Like these numbers aren't perfect and you have to look at the human being first and foremost. And trends are definitely going to be king as compared to like one metric because they're just not perfectly accurate. I mean, is that kind of the bottom line?
That's pretty much don't chase the number, chase the trend, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
where yeah, and right, these wearables are getting so smart with their equations. Like you said, it can track when it's going to estimate like there's something going on with your system. Like maybe take it easy today. So it gives you these warning signs, and it's off of like body temperature and HRV, right? Like it's done enough, I guess, research on their own or their however the way they do it. They're getting smarter. They're getting a lot smarter. So
Totally.
um,
Sometimes it's surprising to myself or other people, and it picks up on
mhm,
things, like for a woman's cycle, they usually can pick up when you've ovulated, your resting heart rate goes up a little bit, your temperature goes up a little bit. Once you're in your luteal phase, there's very slightly less resiliency in terms of strain.
Yeah.
So it can pick up on those things that a woman may or may not be able to pick up on naturally. It's a little bit subtle, right? And then there's some obvious ones, like I laugh sometimes, my husband and I typically wear an Aura and he typically wears a Whoop, but we'll laugh, like, if our son, well, we have an 11-month-old, he wakes up, like, 7 times when he's in a sleep regression, and they're like, "Something messed with your sleep last night. What could it have been?" And we just start laughing. It's, like, so obvious. Or if, like, one of us takes over and the other one gets perfect sleep, and then it's like,
Mhm.
"Something really helped your recovery last night. Why don't you continue that?" And I'm like, "Wouldn't that be nice?"
Oh, I know.
So,
Yeah.
some of them are like, it just makes you laugh,
It's
but
totally.
they are getting very smart.
They are, and that I think that's where people sometimes are like, that okay, duh, that was obvious, right? But it's the things that you uncover that you're like, "Oh, I didn't know that looking at this email, my heart rate was higher and da 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 da," right? So it's like those again, going
Totally.
back to just the awareness of like, that's what you want out of these wearables, right? Just building that awareness and then making the choice of like, what are you gonna do the next time?
Yeah, what do you think in terms of, I love what your knowledge based on the HRV monitoring. So just selfishly, I would love to learn about this. I work a lot with nervous system support for patients and somatic inputs to kind of calm down that sympathetic overdrive, especially with autoimmune patients or patients with a history of trauma or even just every day, right? Like we're just in our sympathetic a lot. Just that's normal these days, right? So for patients that are wanting to utilize sauna or breath work or a acupressure mat or meditation or whatever their version of this might be, is there anything that you find, or like the Apollo wearable, like, is there anything that you find that more accurately can discern if something is working on a somatic level? So, meaning like that's really kind of raising the HRV in real time, lowering the heart rate in real time. Like, what do you find the most accurate? Now, take this with a grain of salt, everyone, because if you're fixated on numbers while you're doing these things, you're probably in your sympathetic nervous system. However, there's there's a gray area here, right? Because we want to know we're not just like spending money on gadgets and it's not doing anything. Like, so there's a buy-in we want to have too of like, I remember the first time I laid on my acupressure mat, and it was really uncomfortable. But then I looked every single time I do that, my Aura Ring says I'm immediately in a restorative state, even
Mm,
if I started super high. I don't really know how accurate that is. I'm curious if you know the science on that. But I just think this is an interesting question, so I don't know what your
yeah.
experience is here.
So I think we have to take it back to the device's measurements. How are they measuring these things? So are you familiar with the RMSSD, the root mean square of the sex? So a lot of the devices use RMSSD. One device it's SDNN is the other one, and I'm forgetting the actual term, the standard deviation of normal to normal intervals. So we have to just kinda understand what is the device using, and then from there decide, do we wanna trust that device? So, like, the Apple Watch is one of the few wearables that we uses the SDNN. So when you're asking, like, is there truth or can we understand if this, Pulsetto device or these vagus nerve device, the Sensei device, do they all help, like, real time improve that HRV? Your HRV, right, it's going up and down every second, right? It's we're just we I don't think we, can really say that, like, long term, can this help? It's like looking at the consistency of using that product or that thing over time. Did it help HRV trend go up in the week when you were consistent with using it?
So
If you
you'd still rather look at trends rather than the moment during these activities, what does it do for the body? You'd still rather look at trends of recovery overall?
I would
Okay.
honestly, and just because, y I mean, yeah, if you'll know if that device worked, you feel more calm, you feel kind of more in that parasympathetic state, but you can go right back up, right? Then and the next thing, and it's like, it's really just balancing the whole day into that more parasympathetic tone, right? So, yeah, I would still follow the trends over time and not, like, the moment in time.
Yeah, I'm so curious about this. I think it looks like, yeah, Apple Watch and some of the Garmins use the SDNN.
SDNN. Yeah,
Um,
I've actually
and
pulled,
otherwise, even like
Yeah.
the Leap device, some of the like HRV specific, recovery devices,
And so
primarily are the RMSSD.
so to my understanding, the SDNN, like, it calculates, um, like, if it doesn't, like, if it's missing information, it'll calculate it into its algorithm more closely to what it might be if it missed that, like, scan or setting, right? So if it was like
Yeah.
you're going from 70 beats per minute to 160 in a second, that's probably not true. So it's going to estimate that. And there's even genetic codes. So like going back to like what we do, like we can I've done this for a patient is look into their HRV SNPs regarding like RMSSD and their predispositions to um actually lower numbers for that. So how do when it's more of a um understanding of like this is your genetics are just because genetics play a role too with HRV. Like some people just live high and some people just live low. And so we have
Yes.
these codes
Patterns are
now.
definitely the only thing we know are what
Hmm.
really matters here. People ask this question all the time. I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
this up because a lot of
Hmm.
people are like, "Damn, I got this wearable," and when they initially put their Whoop or their Aura on, if you're one of those people that lives in the teens or 20s or 30s and your HRV at baseline, you're probably going to get lower recovery, but it's going to calibrate to your pattern over the
Yes.
first, 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's really like you said, the trend that matters,
Hmm.
and we wanna know what's raising your HRV over time versus wanting your HRV over time, m more so.
Yep. 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 And remember,
Super interesting. I'd never
yeah.
looked into SNPs on this, but it makes
It's
sense.
so it's so fun, and then where you when you look at the information, it's really like, well, okay, and what are we doing for our lifestyle behaviors? Are we still prioritizing vagus nerve specifically, right? For this person that has high like risk or predisposition to low HRV, because they may have more cardiorespiratory or cardiovascular risk. So we kind of like look at that in a picture, and it's actually helpful for the patient to know that, so they're not just like, I need to be at 100. Which HRV, by the way, is like that's why I love that we're doing VO2 max now as our test because that's I would go for a higher VO2 max individual in a low with a lower HRV versus a higher HRV individual and a low VO2 max. Like
As your
that,
personal goal, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the evidence is
Yeah.
crystal clear that that is a stronger
Mhm.
predictor of cardiovascular health.
Mhm.
Um, the evidence is a lot more murky with HRV, right?
Right.
Like, we do
Right.
generally think higher is better for cardiorespiratory
Y
fitness,
Yeah.
but it's pretty murky and patterns are, like you said, king. So, interesting, super cool. So bringing this up kind of brought up something for me when you talked about the patterns just now and the questions that come up a lot with HRV for people when they put these things on. So one kind of caveat I want to get for people is especially if you're somebody that data, Ray's not wrong. What gets measured gets managed. And sometimes data overload can become a huge stressor in and of itself. If the energy behind what you're doing is to perfect every single thing in your health, you're probably going to have a little bit of a paradoxical response and stress on your system. So, none of us can be perfect, right? The goal is to kind of hold all of this loosely and like he said, get data on your body, understand patterns. How does your body work best? What are specific vulnerabilities for your system? It's really honestly quite frankly how we look at genetics as well. We're looking at patterns of strengths and vulnerabilities and how do we best support those in the areas we can control, right? And or help patients do that in the areas they can control. So similarly with wearables, don't ideally become paralyzed by this data and let it drive, or it's going to cause a lot more stress. So really good point that I think we've kinda, like, circled around a few times in this conversation. What would you say are some common benefits, if you had to rapid fire it, that patients have, like, learned from getting this data when they throw a wearable on? And I'll put CGM on there too. We don't need to dive into CGM or continuous glucose monitor, but it is one of the wearables we frequently use. It's a little different than these other biometric wearables with vital assessment, but, what do you think, like, one off the top of my head that I can think of that's super common is, late night food and alcohol use tend to shift pretty quickly when people see the data that comes following those things for a lot of people. So those are just like off the top of my mind. Are there other super common ones that you find that people, make shifts on, like the time of day of exercise, or like what are some common
Yeah.
ones you see?
Yeah, so the 2 mentioned are the biggest ones, the alcohol and
Okay.
eating late, right? But you brought up, CGM. I do wanna I'll quickly touch on this. One patient I
Yeah.
had, didn't have any food, but had his meetings, and all of a sudden his glucose levels were rising, right?
Mm.
So it's stress, right? So cortisol, right? That was more of the that's one of the actually, the things that I look at more on a CGM now is more of, like, higher stress. What is that doing to keep levels elevated or stay elevated, right? Or spike really high when no food. So that was an interesting one to me, that we try to, look into a little bit more. But the ones you mentioned, I think were the biggest ones: the alcohol, the food, late night eating, um let's see, caffeine too. So like having caffeine late for some, I see kind of affect them more anxiety and affects their restorative sleep metrics.
Yeah,
Um,
so a lot of people will say I can fall asleep just fine when I have coffee at night,
it's
but like, is
still
their sleep quality the same? Is there actual sleep
no, it's
architecture and sleep like restorative sleep metrics? Do you see a change?
no. I usually see the lower restorative metrics when someone says that, and that's not having your latency right too. Like if you're knocking out in under 3 minutes, you're probably, like, really stressed and overworked, or your body's just really, really overworked at that point. I think we wanna, the latency is, like, under 10 minutes still, but, like, if you're in, like, 1 to 3 minute, we gotta
Like
kinda
5
look
to
at.
10 is probably ideal, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I've seen a little bit of that too. When they tell me that, I'm like, "Okay, we gotta look more deeply into your,"
And so what Ray's talking about is
yeah.
the time you lay
Mhm.
down and intend to go to sleep to when you actually fall asleep, that
Right.
that, like, delta.
Mhm. Yeah. So, there again is so many lifestyles and behavior, things that we can look into, but those are probably the main ones that I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the stress piece is so interesting. I, And it's not always just emotional stress. Like, I
Mhm.
see this so much in women, like, people will come to me and so often they've had an A1C checked and they're like, "I kinda run high on my A1C," or, "I've been pre-diabetic for a long time." So a lot of women will say, "I'm fasting and I'm keto and I'm, doing a lot of cardio," and all these intentional changes to try to, like, optimize their blood sugar from really clear intakes they like, things they've read online or whatever, been told,
Right.
based on these numbers, but then we come to find out maybe their fasting insulin is like 1, maybe they're not insulin resistant at all, and they are just really high, like, they're just cortisol driven, and then these other things become further physiologic stressors on their systems, and
Uh-huh.
so they're actually blood sugars raising, in the morning when they have their coffee, and then when they work out, and then when they're, like, in their meetings or running errands or whatever, and so, sometimes it's like it's kind of paradoxic, like, when you add a bit more fuel in before your training or a bit more fuel in before your caffeine or earlier in the day, you don't stack both stressors, you actually see your blood sugar lower even if it's more food, less fasting, and more carbs done in the right way. So it's super interesting, and it lets us really, like, these CGMs let us really refine that process, and I think it can be
Mhm.
super validating for people because I don't know about for men, but especially for women culturally, like, sometimes eating more and eating more carbs and these things could be super scary because we've just been, like, told since the beginning of time that these things are gonna be terrible for our health and
Totally.
our body composition, and
Yeah.
so I think it can be really, really empowering. I've worked with professional athletes that we've dropped their A1C by pre-fuel workouts by, you know, like
Yeah.
5 tenths. Like, it's really incredible what cortisol and stress hormone can do, and it's not always just, like, stop stressing out. Like, sometimes there's very specific lifestyle inputs that can be kinda simply changed that can lower stress really immensely.
Yeah. Man, and that's why I love doing CGMs with our patients. Again, just that building awareness of what are they doing currently in their lifestyle, their nutrition lifestyle, and how do we change it? So, again, trends is what we look for. So we typically have them wear it for 1 to 2 weeks. They meet with me and we go over like what did we see here? What did we do? And then it's like creating the plan and making the choice to, okay, I'm not going to have that 1 cup of rice. It's going to be half a cup, right? We're going to play with like what that is. But that's one of my favorite things to do is review the CGM data, because again, it gives that person more of an awareness tool, and ultimately this their choice moving forward, like how they want to. You look at the food and you're like, I know what that's going to do to my glucose. You're like, it's your
Yeah,
choice
yeah.
now. It's like, oh,
For
do I
sure,
want
it's
it
an
to spike?
actual informed
Mhm,
decision, right?
mhm,
And also you can know, like, our bodies need to use fuel, right? So it's really
mm,
interesting. Yes, you might like in other countries, a lot of people are walking everywhere. They're walking to and from their meals. Like, try to have a high carb meal and then go for a walk with your family. See what happens to your blood sugar after dinner, right? Like, it's
yeah,
really interesting when you move your body and actually get that fuel where it's supposed to go to the muscles and you
mhm,
utilize the body in the way it's designed. You know, I think it's really fascinating and empowering for people to get this data, right? So, okay,
totally.
awesome. This was
Yeah.
so cool. Give people, if there was some elevator pitch you wanted to give our listeners for some just really, I mean, people are, these things are not super cheap. They're sometimes can be stressful. Like, what if you had to tell your patients what's like the highest ROI for, of information for wearables, what would you want them to know?
I kind of mentioned this in the middle of our talk, but don't chase the number, right? Chase the like look at the trends. That's we have to look at it from that perspective. If you have a wearable, if you don't have a wearable, there's paper and pencil, like a journal. Like we can totally go off of that. But it's really understanding your lifestyle and behavior. That's truly like where it's empowering and where the story is and how progress is made. Right. We want to make sure we understand where we're at and how are we going to change it. So yeah.
Yeah, and these are just a tool, right? Like, historically, we have data on populations of people, and
Mhm.
it's really hard running an experiment on yourself, and the endpoint is, well, this worked on average in this group of 100,000 people or however many people that study was done on. That's
Yeah.
not really great, right? But when we have something like this, where you have a closed loop cycle, like with a continuous glucose monitor or a biometric wearable, you could run an experiment on you and N of one, which
Yep.
I consider precision medicine to be basically N of one medicine. I mean, you're using unique data. You could run an experiment and then look at your data changes and get
Right.
help doing that with our coaches or providers or whatever. Or technology can help you too, if that's not overwhelming for you. So I think it's really cool when not taken to the extreme, right? Like, you look at the
Right.
patterns, you use the data to empower your choices and inform your choices, and then live your life and allow some gray and some nuance, right?
Totally.
Because we're not just walking algorithms. We're gonna have like we're gonna have vacations, we're gonna have stressful moments, we're gonna have kids that wake up in the middle of the night. It's just part of it. It's part of the joy and the mess of all of it, right? So, this
Totally.
was awesome. I think people
Thanks,
are gonna
Erin.
get a lot out of this, right? Because people are so interested in wearables these days, but I get a lot of questions because people just aren't sure what to invest in or what's gonna help them, and how to use these numbers. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yay. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you want more daily health education, be sure to follow us on Instagram, which is filled with health optimization how-tos, grocery shopping lists, guided breathwork posts, myth debunking, and so much more. You can find us at Wild Health MD on Instagram.